I'm Karthik Kannan from Cox School of Business, SMU, and this is joint work with my co-author Arvind Karunakaram from Stanford Engineering. I would like to first thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to present. I'm very excited to present because of two reasons. One is I'm an empiricist, but for the reasons you'll see in a bit, this is actually an ethnographic study. It lends itself well to surveys, interaction, and asking questions to actual people. So it's a kind of a mixed method study where we have some quantitative evidence and some surveys. And second is this is very much an ongoing work. This is the very first time that we are presenting. So your feedback will be extremely valuable to us in developing the paper further. A lot of speakers here have said about the rapid proliferation of GenAI use. Alex also mentioned about it. I think the statistic is ChatGPT reached 100 million users in 2 months. That's the fastest rate of diffusion for any technology. Okay, and as people are using this technology, social organizational norms are being shattered. Okay, one example, like Alex actually raised this in colleges and schools. Okay, there's a notion that people are cheating their way through college, and this is happening at schools and colleges, and professors like us and teachers are now enforcing disclosure policies for GenAI. Okay, if any assignment, students have to say what they have used GenAI for and what exactly has been affected by GenAI. Okay, and some students who are honest and who don't want to use GenAI actually have to go to great lengths. In fact, there's one student who recorded like an hour-and-a-half video of her typing the assignment to show that she actually did not use GenAI. So there's a mistrust between teachers and students in the schools, universities. And in these situations, it's important that people disclose what they're using. And it works the other way around too. Students are now complaining that professors are using GenAI. In fact, there is an article that one student in Northeastern, she demanded her course fee back because a professor is using GenAI and she said she could do the same thing herself and learn, so why pay tuition? And the university now apparently has a policy where the professors, faculty have to disclose how they have used GenAI in course development and be clear, transparent. So as GenAI usage increases, disclosure of GenAI usage becomes very important, and that's what this study is about. Okay, and we are going to focus on software engineering. And this is going to be a 3-part study. 3 parts are there. And first one is we will look at the Stack Overflow Developer Survey for 2024 to understand the usage, the current usage, and the sentiment towards GenAI tool usage in software development. And second is this an empirical part where we look at Apache Software Foundation. It's one of the largest open source foundations, and how they have come up with disclosure policies and how people are following their policy. The third part is the ethnographic study where we actually go to software engineers and talk to them and understand what is going on with disclosure policies. Okay, so it's a 3-part study. First is the developer survey. More than 50,000 developers were surveyed in this analysis, and a lot of developers are using GenAI tools in the development. More than 70% admit that they're using or they plan to use GenAI tools. It's not surprising. And most of them say that it has increased their productivity. Okay. More than 80% say that using GenAI tools have increased their productivity. They can write more code and it makes them happy. And they also say that they are in favor of using a lot more GenAI tools in software development. That's all great news. Okay. But when we ask them a little bit more about what are the limits and what are the problems, then cracks begin to emerge. Okay. Number one is they report that more than half of them report that GenAI tools are not good at complex tasks. They don't understand the complexities of the architecture and the code base, so they're not good at development. So that's what they say. And second is that they also say they don't trust GenAI tools for many reasons, a couple of reasons. One is they say that they don't trust the output because they hallucinate and they are inaccurate, and that is proven, right? Generative AI tools, they generate and they have these hallucination problem that cannot be overcome that easily. So because of these reasons, they don't trust GenAI tools. So look at the pattern that's emerging. There is increase in adoption and usage, there is increase in individual productivity, but there's an increase in lack of trust. So given these scenarios, the question is, will they be willing to disclose that they are using GenAI to their peers and others? Okay, so that's the kind of a research question that we are after. So for the second part of the study, let's look at software development in open source development. And there's a recent report by GitHub that shows that more than 40% of the commits in the GitHub community has been helped by Copilot. So Copilot AI tools are being used rapidly in open source development, and there's evidence for that. And we are going to focus on Apache Software Foundation. So this is one of the largest software foundations, open source. More than 1,000 members were dedicated working on this actively to develop many of the software products. And these software products are very important for all of us because they go on into Google, Amazon AWS, and all of these products that we all rely on. So it's important for us to understand what ASF, Apache Software Foundation, is actually doing about this. Okay. So one problem with LLMs, I think I was chatting with Daniel Rock yesterday, is that they hallucinate. And while it hallucinates, it can suggest package names, libraries that doesn't exist. And people can exploit this and put malicious code in these non-existent packages that are similar in name to actual packages. And that way they can inject bad code into the system. And this is very easy because when you generate code and you don't check everything, bad packages get in. In fact, there's a variation of pandas packages that does everything that pandas does and a little bit more. Okay, so if this becomes a norm, then in the very near future, then all of us will be affected by these malwares. Okay, and due to these reasons, Apache Software Foundation, they came up with this disclosure policy. In July 2023, they came up and they said open source developers have to disclose that if they are using GenAI tools. Okay, and this is important for many, many reasons. One is for ensuring trust and security. And second is it has to be legal. The contribution that I'm making, let's say if I'm an open source developer, has to be open source. So if I'm using LLMs, it's quite possible that the LLM is picking up code that's not meant to be open sourceable, and then I'm actually stealing code and giving to open source. So that has legal problems. And of course, to satisfy community norms, I have to disclose and inform my other community members that I will be using GenAI tools. Okay. So they put forth this policy in July 2023 that asks developers that when they are actually going and submitting their work, they have to disclose their tool usage, GenAI tool usage. Okay, and this actually formally got adopted. And in July 2023, there was a guidance sent to all the projects. There are more than 300 active projects, and this is very decentralized. And each project has its own organizing committee, and they discuss and deliberate and take. So it takes time to trickle down and adopt all these policies. Okay, so let's see. So there are more than 300 active projects. And after this directive in July 2023, only 4 projects actually enabled mandatory questions of GenAI usage in the PR. PR is a pull request where whenever I want to contribute as a developer, I want to contribute to open source software, I create a pull request. So this is how the pull request template looks like. There's a question here. Only these 4 projects actually enable this question. It asks, was this patch authored or co-authored using generative AI tooling? Okay, so if after July 2023, if somebody is creating a pull request, this question will pop up and they would have to answer. Okay, so that's the setup here. And what we see is that one is I can just ignore to answer the question and move on. That could be one option. And second is I can just say, no, I'm not using GenAI. And third is I can actually say, yes, I'm using GenAI, and these are the tools, and this is what I used it for, and this is the version of the tool. Okay, so we collected for those 4 projects, we collected more than around 8,000 pull requests for this analysis. Okay, just wanted to get your feedback. How many percentage of PRs do you think disclosed GenAI tool usage? Any guesses? How many yeses? Like how many of them said yes?
20%.
20%. Okay. Any other numbers?
50%.
50. Excellent. Very good. More than 90% said no. No. Okay. Which means they did not use GenAI tools. Okay. Less than a percentage said yes, they used and disclosed what tool they used. And some ambiguities in the answers where they answered in foreign language or they just ignored or deleted the question, some variations of that. Okay. So a vast majority of the people didn't answer.
Is using Copilot considered as using GenAI?
Yes. Yes. Okay, it's a good question. Yes. GitHub Copilot is GenAI. Okay. Got it. All right. So a vast majority did not disclose. I assume that these developers use GenAI. It's very hard to avoid using GenAI as a developer. So that's the trend we are observing. So this is the total PRs. This is trend over time. The blue is total PRs, and the orange is PRs with the question. Looks like some developers deleted the question to be on the safer side. And out of, after the red line is where they answered no, and this green is where they answered yes, and the purple line is ambiguous. Okay, so even if you tag these two together, it's about 5% disclosure rate. And if you look at who disclosed, totally out of 8,000, I found only 68 PRs that were disclosed. And I wanted to see some patterns. This is a small data, right? Okay, first of all, most of them were contributors. So contributors are outsiders who were committing the code by volunteering their time and effort. Whereas a member is a member of the Apache project itself. Only one member has said yes, and the others have voluntarily said yes. And they all seem to deliberately choose to say yes or no based on certain PRs. Like the top guy has said yes to 21 PRs out of 111 PRs that he has submitted. Okay. Well, this is the trend that we are seeing. And these are some of the tools that were disclosed: Copilot, Perplexity, Claude, Cursor, etc. Okay. So far we have relied on surveys and quantitative data to understand what is going on. As you see, the people are not disclosing, so there's not much quantitative analysis to be done. That's why we resort to go and asking people what they did and why they don't disclose. So that's where the third part, ethnographic study, comes in. Here, Arvind actually, he conducted many interviews, more than 45 interviews, to go and talk to them about AI disclosure and the norms around competency and attribution. So here's some of the responses. I'll highlight a few. Okay. The first trade-off seems to be between speed and accuracy. GenAI tools help us to create code quickly and post it quickly. However, if I do a fast job, then it's quite possible that the code has errors and it leads to downstream issues. And so there's a speed without accountability is a risk. And there's also a credibility hit when people use GenAI and their code is bad and peers think badly of them. And the other question is, peers are asking, did it accelerate your thinking while you're using GenAI, or did you just copy and paste? So that's what they want to know. So there's a trade-off between speed and accuracy. And second is about in a team environment, there seems to be some dynamics between trust, understanding, and coordination between the teams. It's like if one person uses GenAI and the code is bad, it affects everybody else. Okay, so do they actually know how the code works? And if somebody posts code that they don't know how it works, it becomes a bottleneck for the other team members. I need to trust that you have pressure tested the solution before handing us the code. And it slows the rest of us down. And some members reported that using GenAI tools is like a get out of jail free card, where if there's a problem, I can say, oh, ChatGPT suggested it, I just pasted. They want people to hold themselves accountable for what they have done, and every code that they are submitting should be tested and validated and owned by the individual before submitting. So that seems to be the main issue going on that leads to lower disclosure rates. So quickly I'll summarize, I'm running out of time. So disclosure is not usage. I know we all know everyone uses it, but disclosure rates are very low, and there's a lot of social and organizational dynamics, and trust seems to be low in this area. So I'll pause, I'll just leave some of these implications in the screen while we can discuss and take questions. Thank you.
Questions from anyone?
Do you think that the other major problem is this is going to be that the developers essentially going to be having a long strategical de-skilling problem, basically losing the skills that they possess now instead of increasing them? I guess playing to the previous presentation of Alex saying that, you know, developers are students, right? You always learn. There's new languages come out. You know, when I was, you know, there was. We started as assembler and then moved on.
Yes.
I think this is a much bigger question than somebody committing code that have malicious intent.
Yeah, I think that's very true, because a lot of us have learned programming language the proper way, and when we now use GenAI tools, we know what the output is. But as a new person, like new students who haven't studied programming languages in depth, this will be a problem. For them to analyze the code and validate it, it'll be harder. That's very much quite possible. And we'll also talk about this to the developers. We have more interviews scheduled. So thank you. Yes, Alex.
Have you tried using, maybe as part of your structured interview, did you have something like how many of your peers use AI or something like that? These like indirect questioning techniques to get at like ground truth?
That's a great point. We haven't done, but I think we have more interviews scheduled, but we'll use that. I'll discuss with you about that. Awesome.
Well, if there are no other questions, then thank you very much.